Okay, we're going to go ahead and begin now. Thank you for your patience. The Tuesday, May 14th, 2024 Kingsport City Schools Board of Education regular meeting is now called to order. Dr. True, we have many special guests with us tonight, and we're going to ask you to start it off.
Thank you very much. We do want to welcome everyone to the meeting this evening. We're glad you're all able to be a part of our gathering. I'm going to ask Micah Lawson to come up and join me for the pledge. Micah is a senior at DBXL. Thank you for spending part of your last couple of weeks here with us tonight. So you were telling me before the meeting, at DBXL for all of your high school career. What was it about DBE that attracted you to it, that made you want to attend DBXL?
I really think the smaller environment and just getting to know my teachers better was a big draw.
What is it that you have found over the course of your career there? Have you been involved in activities? Have you been doing things there that are unique?
I've been able to become student council president and leader of the Armades underwater robotics team, which there are opportunities at main campus, but I get to be more active.
So Armades has had another successful year. Tell us a little bit about how that went this year.
We are going to advance to international competitions. 2 days before competition, we actually had to rebuild our entire robot, which was a task.
So what are your expectations now are you going to nationals, is that right?
We're going to go to internationals. They're held in Kingsport, so we're going to be able to definitely be there, and we think we're going to put up a pretty good chance of being top 10.
And when is that?
It's June 18th through 20th.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. My last question was going to be, what after graduation? So that's coming up. Then what beyond that? What are your plans for beyond graduation?
I plan to attend Milligan University for mechanical engineering, and then hopefully get a job either around here or if someone else offers me, it's up to God at that point.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for being with us. It sounds like you have had an exciting experience and have a lot of great things ahead of you. So we're glad you're here tonight, and thank you. If you would all please rise, we're going to go ahead and turn this direction whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Micah, and I hope you have a great experience at Milligan. Go Buffs. Okay. Now is the time I'd like to ask for a motion to accept the agenda, which includes the consent agenda. Once the agenda is accepted, the board mutually agrees not to discuss any item of business or take any action that has not been accepted for the agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Okay, and at this time, we will cast the vote.
Oh gosh, where's that at?
Okay, and so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The votes have been cast, and that has been approved. At this time, we're going to have some additional recognitions, and we will begin, I think, with Mr. Todd Golden, who is going to recognize some Tennessee State High School indoor track and field champions.
Thank you. If Nigel and Brady could please join me up here, I'd like to recognize you. I apologize. I should have memorized your names in this brief second. So it appears as though both of you have competed in the state indoor track and field championships in Vanderbilt in Nashville in February of this year. And from that, it appears as though you won, right? Which is why we have you here. And set the record, was it a 6'2" jump?
It was a metric, but it was around that.
Okay. You're being modest. That's taller than me, so you jumped over me. And Braden, what was your time on the 6-meter hurdles?
I think it was 8:13.
8:13. Okay, which is faster than most of us could run 20 feet. So on behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to congratulate both of you on your accomplishments in the state meets and give you these recognitions. We can all applaud.
parents, if you'd like to get some pictures, it's quite the accomplishment.
They wouldn't be here without mom and dad. So.
And these gentlemen are being very modest because they just recently, if I read results correctly, they are both headed to Murfreesboro. They're going to be competing in the state outdoor competition. It's a lot of fun. Remember doing that with my own daughter, and it's tons of fun. So wish them the very best. Jumping hurdles. So I'm sure Coach Bingham's going to miss them next year. Okay, thank you very much, guys. Good luck next week. And now we have some students who have qualified for the National Speech and Debate Association National Tournament. That recognition is by Mr. Tim Dean.
Still don't like this setting. I'd rather talk to you all. And the National Speech and Debate Association has since 1931, has had a national tournament. And this year, if I'm right, Laura Humphrey, is in Des Moines, Iowa, right? Yeah. And we have 9 students that have qualified for this national tournament in Iowa. And a couple things I wanted to say about this that really got my attention is these folks, they pledge to participate in this national tournament. And I want to read it. It says, I pledge to uphold the highest standards in the pursuit of excellence. And the standards they agree to adhere to are humility, equity, integrity, respect, leadership, and most importantly, service. And we could use all those lessons in here as we debate things. And I admire you greatly for being willing to participate in this. And I can promise you, what you're learning here is going to take you into a lot of good opportunities to utilize those skills in the course of your life. So if you would come up, if I call your name, I think a couple of people may not be here, but if Avery Byram, maybe just stand right here for me. Mackenzie Connolly, 11th grader, not here. Jalen Fields, okay. Lydia Hurst. Oh, there she was hiding. Lily Hudson. Maggie Perry. Cameron Roberts.
Different one. Yep.
What? Cameron Sims. Okay. Cameron Sims. Cameron. And Eleanor Voigt.
And we have one more, Aurora Palmer.
Aurora Palmer. Did I miss your name? I certainly did. 12th grader too. But these folks are going to participate in things like debates, but also in presentations on really thorny issues. It's not, why is the sky blue? It's stuff that's really difficult to hash out. And the thing I love most about it is you're all dedicated to having a civil debate with these standards in mind. And I think all of our society could use what you guys are learning right now. So thank you for that. And I know you want to take some pictures over there, and I'll try to get these out to you. There's yours will be wrong, I'm sure, maybe. Avery?
That's fine.
Maybe just head over that way, we'll take some pictures. Let's see. Mackenzie. You want to hold hers? Okay. Thank you. Don't scratch your name out, put somebody else. It's like something I would do. Jalen Fields. You don't want to-
I could give Jalen.
Okay. This is Lydia. Actually Lily Hudson. There we go. Thank you. Aurora Palmer. Here you are. You're up. Maggie Perry. That's all right. We'll do it every day. Cameron Sims. Cameron. Yeah. And Eleanor Boyd. Thank you.
It's always nice to see the coaches or sponsors or directors, the smiles on their faces. They just beam with pride at the accomplishments of these students, and they are well earned. We're really proud of them. Ms. Humphreys, I have to ask, is this a record number for your national competition?
Two the last 2 years, and now we're up to 8.
Marty,
So-
you get in on the picture, by the way.
Absolutely. So the last 2 years, and this year she has 8 qualifying. So that's pretty good increase in participation. Mm-hmm. Again, congratulations and best of luck in Des Moines. And now at this time, I'm going to recognize from some students on the Student Congress on Policies and Education. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Mason Brown, Emma Nicole, and Ella Stidham to come on up. So these students, as well as Jake Dempsey, were seniors who participated in the Tennessee School Board Association 2024 Student Congress on Policies and Education Conference at Belmont University in Nashville on March 5th, 2024. Now in its 41st year, SCOPE is designed to give students a voice where public education issues are concerned and to involve young people in finding solutions to the topics that are discussed. Attendees participated in mock school board sessions where they assumed the roles of school board members, school officials, parents, students, and concerned citizens. The sessions were led by school board members and superintendents from across the state. So they're going to give a report here in just a minute. I'm going to let them explain what they did. But we're so proud of them that they were able to represent Dobyns-Bennett at the conference, and they're going to, like I said, give us a brief report on their conference experience to the board here and to our listening audience, and also thank you to Ms. Shelby Lawhead, who is social studies teacher at Dobyns-Bennett, who was their chaperone. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you all if you want to just come up here to the mic, and then we'll issue your certificates in just a moment.
What is SCOPE? SCOPE is Student Congress on Policies and Education. So every year, SCOPE does a thing where they have high school students from all over the country, or not the country, but Tennessee, and they come together and they talk about issues where through mock school board meetings, group discussions, and debates with their peers, and it helps you get a better understanding on how boards operate.
So this year, the SCOPE debate topics were every student has to complete an internship during their senior year in order to graduate. Another one was artificial intelligence may not be used while completing homework. A third one would be the school week should be 4 days long. And the final one was student cell phone use during school hours should be prohibited. And all 3 of us had the 4th topic.
You can go to the next slide, yeah. I would say that overall, we had a great experience at Scope. We got to meet a lot of new people. A lot of the people in our groups were actually from the Tri-Cities. Even though we were in Nashville, got to meet some people from Science Hill that actually weren't too bad. And we got to see how school board meetings actually go. It's kind of interesting, like the things you guys have already done so far. We already got to kind of learn how that works and be a part of that. Miss Lawhead was very fun. She took us on a little adventure, and everybody that we met was just so like fun and bold personalities, very outspoken, but also understanding. Everybody cooperated very well together. We were all in different groups, actually, so we didn't get to spend the day together, but I think that actually made it better for all of us. And we actually didn't want to leave at the end of the day. We were like, we would stay a couple more days, actually, because we had a lot of fun, and more fun than I would have ever expected to have at something like that. So thank you, guys. That's all. Thank you.
Well, I want to know where you came down on the topic of not having cell phones. Yeah.
It was.
I don't know. We had the one that said cell phones was good, and our opponents had cell phones was bad, and they won. We did not win.
Okay. I'm just making note of this, so we should get rid of cell phones.
She was in the winning group. I was in the losing group.
I lost.
But you learned a lot, right? We did. So we will see them next week at graduation. That's hard to believe that we're even saying that. Okay. Now we're going to move on. If we're going to have just a brief recess. If you would like to leave at this time, if you're a parent who was here with an honoree, you're welcome to leave. Otherwise, we'll move on to the business section of our meeting for tonight, and we'll begin with Dr. True.
Well, good evening. We do have two policies for you this evening, and we also come ready to answer questions or have further discussion since we don't have a work session this month. If there are any other discussions that we need to have regarding procedures when it comes to one of the policies that's being presented tonight. So two policies for consideration on first reading. Again, discussed at the work session. Policy 4.202 is a current KCS policy on special education. As we went through the process over the last few months in talking with the KCS special education director and feedback from our federal programs monitoring, there was some revision and some addition to the policy that was recommended to align not only with our practice, but also the requirements that were presented to us and needing to include them in our policy as it regards. You can see them there on page 1, lines 5 through 18. So those are just, again, TSB model wording to bring our policy up more to current and what is required from federal programs. Then 6.307 is the first reading of new policy, student alcohol and drug testing. We've spoken about that in the past. That is the same wording. One minor change to that, adding any and all voluntary extracurricular activities as per our discussion at the work session last time. So those are the two policies we bring to you on first reading. Again, also in your packet this evening is an updated version of the random drug testing regulations and procedures and an accompanying presentation that just outlines that document. Again, revisions based on what we talked about last month at the work session. If you have any questions, we're happy to discuss that.
Okay, so is there any discussion?
Well, we need to talk about what's come out what our findings were this week pertinent to this.
Yes. So, Dr. Hampton, if you would, or do you want to discuss it?
It's fine.
Okay.
He's more.
Dr. Hampton, if you will go ahead and speak with additional information that we have learned as far as those who would be participating in our extracurricular activities and how some would be affected.
As we were having some conversations about procedures related to this policy, the topic of homeschool students and co-op students, and for the sake of those who may be listening in the audience or who may watch delayed or who may be watching live, co-op students are those students who are attending another high school and participating on an athletic team at our school because their school doesn't have that program or doesn't have that sport. We currently have that. We co-op at Dobyns-Bennett with bowling. So students who bowl at West Ridge or who attend school at West Ridge bowl with us because we have a co-op agreement with West Ridge that has been approved by TSSAA. Preliminarily, we think we may do a co-op agreement with them for lacrosse, which will be starting next year, boys and girls lacrosse. Or that's been discussed. And so, we were talking about the logistics of what it would look like for the random testing for those individuals because they're not on our campus during the day. And, we did some consultation with Mr. Rowlett, Mr. True, primarily the person leading that conversation. And those individuals, the co-op and the homeschool students, are not by legal definition considered students of our LEA of Kingsport City Schools, Dobyns-Bennett High School, or DBXL, and thus would not be subject to this policy. And so, Mr. Rowlett's with us in the audience today should we have questions, but I think he explained that pretty clearly, and I shared some of that information with you in our board update last week. I think Mr. True may have some additional information on that as well, but that will be part of just part of the logistics in our procedural planning should you choose to pass this policy. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would just concur to that, and thanks to Mr. Rowlett for providing some guidance to us on that. I think speaks to the definition of student in the code, and the student is enrolled in our LEA, and the two groups that Dr. Hampton mentioned are not enrolled with us in our LEA, so thus by definition they would not be considered students under the policy.
And I would add that is an extremely low number of students, and I can't imagine that would be something that would be out of control or anything like that.
And you said like 20 or something you guesstimate?
That was an estimate.
Before lacrosse.
Before lacrosse. Yeah.
Out of 1,000, roughly?
Between, boys and girls bowling. That's homeschool.
And homeschool.
Homeschoolers and co-op students in all sports.
All combined,
would be about 20 students.
And I think you all are likely aware of this, but if you're a homeschooler, by policy, there's procedures they have to follow to try out and or participate, and they have to have all their information filed with us in my office, and then prior to the start of the season, appropriate communication with the principal and athletic director. So you cannot, for example, in the mid-season say, I'm going to homeschool and continue to participate in an activity. You would have to wait. You could elect to drop as to a homeschool student, but you would no longer participate. And then the following year, you could complete all those procedures and be eligible to participate as a homeschool student. So it's not something you can do midstream, so to speak.
So if somebody were to just hypothetically test positive and then immediately declare that they're going to be a homeschooler,
then they no longer participate in any extracurricular activities at the school.
Okay.
Let me state this yet once again. I'm absolutely 100% in favor of drug testing. Okay? And I'm not an attorney. I know a bunch of attorney jokes, but I'm not really, I'm not an attorney. But I don't understand why this policy says high school students involved. It doesn't say Kingsport City School high school students involved. So why are they teased out with any sort of verbal acknowledgement of that?
So the school's ability to drug test is based in state law, which is the 49.6,
Yep.
42.13.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
So within that part of the code, I forgot the name of the act, but the School Security Act of 1981 is where this particular section on drug testing is laid out. Well, that act, which covers many sections, the very first section applies definitions. And in that very first section applying definitions, it says these definitions apply to everything in this part unless there's an indication to the contrary. And that's where it gives the definition of student as an individual enrolled in the LEA.
And that was what year?
Well, so the act was passed in 1981.
81. Mm-hmm. I can't do math quickly, but that was a long time ago.
Correct. So based on the definition that's provided, you've got to, that is the definition that will apply then in this part that allows for the testing. So it's not that it's carved out from the policy. State law wouldn't actually give the authorization to test these individuals.
I really don't, I mean, you can probably just look at me and tell. I really don't like this. I think it's really unfair. And I think it's just a little bit step further closer to penalizing people that are stepping up to want to participate. That go to our schools. I don't think it's fair. I realize it's 20 out of 1,000 people. That's not the point. I mean, our judicial system is set up that we would rather have 1,000 people, guilty people, go unpunished than one innocent person be punished. That's the premise of our judicial system. So the numbers are irrelevant to me on this. What if we just say, what are the ramifications of us saying we're going to require all students to fill this form out, saying that they will be drug tested?
Based on a contingency.
An individual raising a legal challenge, the system doesn't have the authority to test them.
Right. And we're talking about minority. Out of those 20 people, how many are likely to roll a dice on that? You know, you talk about small numbers and then that kind of thing comes up. It's probably one in a generation or something. So that said, I think it feels to me like ridiculously conservative overkill to do this way. I'm not a lawyer, like I said, so I don't know. I get what you said on some law that was passed 43 years ago. A little bit behind. Do we have the option to say to these external students, you have the option to participate in this just like all your teammates are doing?
No. If by that you mean you're going to be subjected to random testing by the school system.
By a voluntary. I'm saying if they volunteer, all your teammates have to participate in random drug testing. We want to give you the option to be included in that. You don't have to take it if you don't want it, but everybody else is involved with it. We want to give you an option. If I was that person,
can they voluntarily opt in?
Potentially. I would want to think on that a little bit more because, again, you come back to the system's lawful authority
and
to do
coercive. I realize it's a kind of a coercive sort of issue if presented that way.
But because co-oping and homeschool students participating in athletics here, we can't subject them to randomized drug testing based on state law and therefore this policy. Can we create a policy that requires drug testing for them to participate?
And are you contemplating that the school would administer that testing, or that it would be up to the student to do it and show proof on their own?
However it can be done.
It also sounds like the spirit of the thing is we don't want to embarrass little Johnny over at Sullivan North who wants to be on the bowling team. Well, you know, because it'd be obvious he's being pulled out for a drug test. If that's the case, I got no patience for that.
Well, what I would suspect is more likely that has happened is when changes have been made elsewhere in the code, other provisions such as these and this part of Title 49 were not amended to keep up with other changes.
So perhaps one option, if we can't get this to our preference in this initial go of it, perhaps we need to contact our legislators and have them make some changes in the code legislatively so that in the future, any student who participates under the umbrella of Kingsport City Schools would be able to be tested. Would that be a
yes,
path
like
forward
as a for instance, instead of the reference to student when it talks about participants in extracurricular activities in 4213, if that subsection of the statute said participants in lieu of student, then
why can't we put that on the policy? Just strike student and say participant.
Because it's already in the code as student.
I got you.
Yeah.
Right. It looks like they just didn't update it. It was an
Correct.
oversight. Yeah. I'd say in lieu of that, to just pass what we have, if you could, I would like if you would go away and look at and see if we could offer a voluntary option for those. Because the parents are the ones ultimately signing this permission. So it really is up to the parents. If the parents want their children to participate and voluntarily accept the responsibility of having their children subjected to the drug testing, and it's all done on a voluntary basis, if we can legally do that, I'd like to pursue that as we pursue the ramifications at the state level. But,
Mr. Rowlett, just out of curiosity, if someone wanted to take it up legislatively, could someone propose a bill that would allow all students to be randomly drug tested, regardless of their participation in athletics or extracurricular activities? That any student could be randomly selected. Can that be legislatively amended?
I don't know. There are some federal laws, and my recollection in doing research initially on this is this statute arose out of a federal act which cautioned against random drug testing the entire student population, if you will. So I don't know that you could get to a point of just random in general. That's why there is the distinction for reasonable suspicion for all students as opposed to random for participants in extracurricular activities which are voluntary.
Is it something to do, maybe I read this or maybe I dreamed it, it's something to do with, as a public school, they have to come to school. You know, they have to.
Essentially,
they have
yes.
to be enrolled in school, or we have to accept them, whatever, et cetera. Okay. All right, thank you.
Well, it was a right for the
Yes.
student to come to school. It's not a right for them to participate in the extracurricular activity.
Correct.
And, you know, I had this discussion with a parent of a student athlete at work just yesterday. And one of the questions was regarding homeschool and co-oping. And, you know, immediately the question of fairness came up. And I completely agree. I mean, I think anybody participating, representing our schools should have the same standard as those that are enrolled. But, you know, because of this loophole, you know, for the time being, and so their recommendation was, well, I'd just drop it right now because it's just not fair. Well, another school system's inability or lack of initiative to test their student athletes does not make me care for ours any less. And so I'm not doing this in the spirit of fairness, and not me, but I don't believe the board is doing this in the spirit of fairness. It's doing it to protect our kids. So my effort
Completely
still
agree.
remains.
One thing I'm curious about, I ran across some legal term last time we talked about this. Do you remember what that term was?
Disparate impact.
Disparate impact. How are we going to measure a baseline? How are we going to establish a baseline to make sure a year later we've not had a disparate impact? Is there any plans for that?
Well,
Do y'all remember what we talked about? You know, there's a lot of, the federal government will sue organizations who do things like put in policy that they're not going to hire a felon. Well, if that seems to inadvertently exclude a class of people, that's a disparate impact, and the federal government is suing companies over that. They had no intention of doing it. It's just the way it happened to fall out. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Not hugely, but the biggest thing I would be curious about intellectually is have a baseline and see how effective this thing is being. But I don't know, how do you measure, how would you measure an offense? I mean, is it a referral? Like, do you see, we're trying to prevent something, right? That's our goal. What is it we're trying to prevent that we measure routinely? I don't.
The disparate impact could be put in, and I think what you're talking about is what the federal government comes down is when it's woeful neglect or it's done with a purpose.
No, it's not done with a purpose.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Exact opposite.
Yeah, right. If it's done unintentionally.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think they may give you warnings, correct me if I'm wrong, if they notice something, if there's a report, they would do an investigation, but to come down with a hard-handed fist, there'd have to be something that truly shows negligence or truly shows that you were doing this on purpose.
It depends on the political orientation of the group.
Yeah, I mean,
the company.
There's a lot of.
Anyway, I don't mean to get into all that. So, but you understand my question about how are we going to know if this is working or not?
Well, I mean, we have to start somewhere.
I understand. Yeah, I totally
obviously it's not being reported at this time. So year one will be our baseline.
Well, how would you measure if it's working?
I don't know. Like, how do we know there's a drug problem right now? What do we use to quantify our drug problem?
The closest data I think that we would have would be discipline data related to drug use or THC, vaping, and that type of thing.
Yeah.
We also have data.
Mr. Nash presented to us, I think in January.
Yeah.
I mean, the referrals that we had from the first of school till January was almost as many as the entire year last year.
Right.
But I don't.
THC, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years ago. Like, we weren't even recording it as an offense in prior years. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years ago. I think 3. But so I think that could be part of the data that we could track and a decrease in that. I mean, we're putting in some other steps though to try to address that as well. But those would be the closest things I think that we could initially have as benchmark data. Otherwise, I think it would be your year one results.
Well, yeah, I get that. I mean, that's obvious. Our intention before we take a vote is we're trying to prevent drug use. We're trying to deter drug use. And I was just curious as how we know whether it's working or not.
And I guess somebody could actually, could really argue, well, those are school ground offenses, right? So, I mean, you can go back and extrapolate how many of those students were student athletes or extracurriculars, but really until you dig that out, somebody could argue, well, these aren't even the kids that are going to be tested. Well, that's true, but maybe they were.
Last question for me. Probably not. But, the thing's titled Student Alcohol and Drug Testing. Are we testing for alcohol?
No, that is just from a policy standpoint, that code is titled that from a model policy. When you look across the state, regardless of what you're testing for, that's the title of the policy.
Is that accurate? If we're not testing for alcohol, why do we have it in the title of the policy?
It could be removed. In fact, would, for the sake of clarity, if you're not going to test for alcohol or not, especially since the policy as currently written doesn't or the plan isn't to test for alcohol, would be to remove it and then add it, back if you ever got to the point of checking for alcohol.
And I realized just that being in the title and somebody running across that as a parent or kid, it would get your attention, and you might not read any further, and that'd be a good thing, that you should be scared of alcohol. I mean, I get that. So I'm not recommending we necessarily, I just want to make sure we weren't testing.
Correct.
But we can test, the SRO can test if we suspect somebody in school is
Under reasonable
inebriated, right?
suspicion. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or discussions? Okay, so the recommended action then is to pass, to approve the revised policy 4.202 on first reading, and then to approve the new policy 6.3071 on first reading, realizing that it will come back for second reading since it's a new policy. It will come back next month in June for second reading. So is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, if you would cast your vote. Okay, I think all the votes have been cast, so all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The technology is trying to catch up with us. Okay, so all have been accounted for.
What do you have? You have Julie Byers as a yay. That's
I've said in here that she's absent. I'm not sure why it's doing that.
Okay. And Mrs. Byers is not able to be here tonight, so okay. All right. We are learning new technology, folks. It's always so fun. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to action item, business item 5.2, which is to approve a purchase of an electric truck for the Dobyns-Bennett High School Career and Technical Education Program. That is Mr. Fry and Dr. Beauchatton. Welcome.
Good evening. I'll start off and let Dr. Shadden follow up here. So we have for your consideration this evening the approval of a purchase of a 2024 Ford F-150 electric truck. This will be purchased using the state contract number 209 from Lonnie Cobb Ford. The price on that is $77,298. The funding will come from the Innovative Schools Model Grant that we have in place, and it's been approved through the state. So I'll let Bo kind of give you some background information on that.
Sure. Thank you so much. And I think for the first time in my career, I've had the opportunity to be a little bit ahead of the labor market and the needs of the industry. Seems like every minute of my career I've spent in CTE, and every minute of my career I've chased industry. Industry needed it yesterday, and we're trying to catch up. And and unfortunately in education we don't have the fluidity, to change and transition as fast as industry needs. So I think for the first time in my career, this is an opportunity for me maybe to be a little bit ahead of the needs of the labor market industry, which is a little different for me, to be very honest with you. But I don't know in what capacity this is coming, but I feel like it's coming. And electrical vehicle technicians in our area, I think, is going to be a viable career for our current 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders. So the idea is if we kind of start this project now, maybe by the time those 6th and 7th graders get to Dobyns-Bennett High School, that we have some things ironed out. Our program is ready to serve serve them like we need to serve them. And so this particular item, before coming to you, we've taken it to the Chamber has an Education and Workforce Committee. We've taken it to the Education and Workforce Committee twice, and it's a mixture of educators, post-secondary, high school, and industry representatives, and lots of excitement around the opportunity and the possibility about adding this to our current existing automotive maintenance program. Someday it may lead into its own program. It may be its own program of study, maybe its own course, but right now we feel like an electrical vehicle, the components of an electrical vehicle, there's still brakes, there's still tires, there's still power windows, those kind of features that can be incorporated into any automotive maintenance program in the state. So we took it to that board twice and got feedback. And is this something that we need to pursue? And wholeheartedly, they said yes. They appreciated the innovation that we had on this idea. And so David Sewell also was one of the first contacts about, as far as the electrical needed, whether we do a 120 outlet or a 240 outlet, depending on how fast we want to charge the electrical vehicle if purchased. He's been involved, and he has no concerns with the infrastructure of our building to add this component if needed. Steve Leonard was the next contact, the fleet manager for Kingsport City, to see about adding an electrical vehicle to the fleet. He was excited about the opportunity for us to be incorporating this into our automotive program. And so, electrical golf carts, I don't know where all this is headed, and that's the hard part of my career is I'm always preparing students for careers that do not exist. And so that's kind of been, that's nothing new, but if anybody has a crystal ball, it would make this a whole lot easier. But what capacity this will come to Kingsport, I'm not sure, but once you kind of get this on your radar, it pops up a lot. Frequently. And so I'm not by any means an electrical vehicle technician or an expert at it, but McKinstry, Dylan Fontaine with McKinstry has been instrumental in helping guide that work. And so reaching out to experts in the field that can help us guide this and make this program. There's several curriculums. Tesla's had a curriculum since 2018, training technicians. Ford has a program that's for high school students, the ACE program. It's free to us to use. And that's kind of the idea of the Ford. The Blue Oval is coming to, they're constructing the Blue Oval, which will be the electrical vehicle manufacturing production assembly in Tennessee. And so maybe there's a partnership there with the Blue Oval and the Ford. And so you kind of see how that all comes to play. So excited about the opportunity. It's more than just electrical vehicles. The sensing and the computing and a lot of the updates to the electrical vehicles, I understand, is sent to that vehicle, kind of like an update sent to your Dell computer, an update sent to. So how all that works, I'm not sure, but we're interested to learn. And the computer side of that, the IT side of the whole electrical vehicle. So it's bigger than just an automotive maintenance vehicle. So I'll stop there if that's enough for an introduction, maybe.
Dr. Shadden, would you mind speaking to the laboratory opportunity that a vehicle like that brings, and maybe the transportation benefit as well?
Absolutely. So, great point. Thank you. So, more than just our automotive maintenance class, our fire science class has a trailer, and so that was the addition of the extra towing package. I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you. As Mr. Kearns and his fire science program, currently, when we want to haul a 2x4, we have to have maintenance get it for us, because your CT programs, we don't have any way to haul those kind of equipment. So David Sewell and his team are excellent about going and getting things at Lowe's or when we need items picked up, because we just don't have a way to haul it ourselves. So great point. The truck will serve us many different avenues. If we have students going to CTSO competition, Skills USA, Vica, HOSA, and the extended range was another addition that we made to the truck, and the extended range gives us 320 miles. Supposedly, we'll test that, and we'll run some graphs on that and see if approved, if that really does get us 320-mile range. And so, yes, transporting students to work-based learning opportunities, Jobs for America graduate opportunities, competition, scope, wherever the truck can go, and it's an all-wheel drive vehicle, so with Mr. Kearns' Pulaski Club, sometimes they're not on asphalt always, depending on where they're going to the live burn. So yes, thank you so much. It has an opportunity to branch out into all kinds of different programs, but we're going to start with the automotive maintenance program, hopefully.
Can we get a big magnet for the doors to advertise DB?
I'm glad you mentioned that because I sent some pictures to some of our students and let them just kind of have at it. And yeah, it will be branded very well, and hopefully in a Fun Fest parade, or if it's approved. And hopefully our plan is to recruit for the program and have it in parades and have it. Yes, there will be no mistake as to what program this vehicle is connected to, and Kingsport City and Dobyns-Bennett High School. Great point.
Fantastic. It looks beautiful.
So this was put out to bid, and this is Lonnie Cobb Ford.
No, this is purchased off of
Yeah,
this
that's
is
right.
off of the state contract where the state.
And our local people don't participate?
The state solicits bids. I really couldn't speak to that, but when the state solicited bids for everybody in the state, and they're the ones who were successful.
Have you seen the one around the driverless? I saw a couple in Nashville, and I saw one in the Food City parking lot the other day.
It's crazy.
It's just
It's kind of hard to imagine.
Are all these all-wheel drive vehicles?
They are all-wheel drive. Yes, this is an all-wheel drive vehicle, the one that's quoted here. Yes. So.
Well, it's beautiful, and thank you so much for being forward-thinking. I know sometimes you feel like you're trying to play catch-up, but really, just with the most recent purchase, and then this truck, you really are leading the pack. So we're very grateful.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Okay. So the recommended item then is to approve the purchase of a 2024 Ford F-150 Super Crew Cab electric truck for career and technical education in the amount of $77,298, utilizing the statewide contract 209. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, if you would cast your vote.
I'm gonna go back to when I was going in and trying to make sure that I could have Julie off there. Yeah, think we have it. All right, who made the motion?
Brandon.
Okay.
And-
And seconded by Timothy.
Mhm.
All right, now we're ready to vote.
Okay, if you can just correct that after the meeting. So, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? And so the record shows that, yes, it's unanimous. Okay, congratulations. That's fantastic.
Still coming up with Julia.
I know, and I
Just let us know when you get that anatomized.
It came in, and our first training is next week, but we couldn't wait. We had to plug it in and figure out what we could figure out. But our first official training is next week, and it's fabulous. I can't wait to show it to you.
Okay, excellent. We need a field trip to see that anatomage table. We need a field trip. I just had an MRI on my shoulder. I want to see what that really looks like.
Your job is just push the button and go sleep. Waking them up.
That's the scary part.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 5.3, which is the approval to purchase playground equipment for Adams Elementary School. Mr. Fry.
Okay, you'll may recall a couple of meetings ago, we accepted a donation and appropriated funds from the John Adams PTO in the amount of $120,000. We've been working with architect from Cane Rash West to design the playground, and we have got a quote from Playworld in the amount of $99,077.42. This is off of not a statewide contract, but a cooperative, a purchasing cooperative, a national purchasing cooperative, Sourcewell, to purchase this equipment for the John Adams Playground. So there are some architect fees on this in addition to the $99,000, but the total project is well within the $120,000 donation that the PTO made. So we recommend approval.
Okay, any questions, any discussion? Okay, the recommended action then is to approve the purchase of playground equipment from Play World in the amount of $99,077.42, utilizing Sourcewell contract number 010521 LTS 8. If you would, cast your vote. Oh, wait, motion for approval.
So moved.
I'll take that in a second, okay?
I think me and Todd vote.
Okay, I think all the votes have been cast, okay? And so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we'll move on to item 5.4, which is to enter into a contract with Preston Construction for the Nancy Pridemore Little Theater renovation project.
So several months ago, maybe even a year ago, the board appropriated funds for 3 or 4 capital improvement projects. One of them was to do some renovations to the Nancy Pridemore Theater. Mainly, we started out replacing the seats in the theater. The seats are old and they need to be replaced. But when we got in there and got the architect looking at everything, and the scope kind of went a little bit farther than just replacing the seats. So the scope includes replacing the floor covering, painting, doing some work in the balcony, the railing at the front of the balcony, and when you're sitting back, or you can't hardly see the stage. So there's a significant amount of work doing with the railing in the balcony to lower that. Of course, it meets all the code requirements and everything, but to lower that so the line of sight from the balcony down to the stage is much improved. We sent out bids on March 30th, opened bids on April 30th. We got 3 bids. They actually ranged in base bid from a high of $648,200, which was way, I don't know what that was. But the 2 competitive bids, one was $344,600 and the low bid was $322,000. So there were 2 bids that were very competitive. There was an option, there were 2 options. One option was to, on the seats, to have a kind of like a tablet arm that came up. That was the Preston Construction's bid on that was $52,600. We're not recommending to accept that. That's just too much. But there was another option, $10,000, which was to replace the tile on the stairs that go up to the balcony, the ceramic tile, to replace those. We contemplated should we do that in-house and not spend this $10,000, but when it came down to it and started talking with the architect about it, we decided that this is probably a pretty good price to do that work, and it frees up our maintenance guys from having to do the work. So we're recommending to accept that bid. Total project cost will be $367,520, which includes the architect fee, which we've already entered into, for $15,600. Construction cost of $332,000, and a 6% contingency of $19,920. So we're recommending to accept the low base bid from Preston Construction for $322,000, in addition to alternate number 2 for $10,000. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions or discussion for Mr. Fry? Okay, is there a motion for approval? The recommended action is to enter into agreement with Preston Construction Company for the renovations of the Nancy Pridemore Little Theater at Dobyns-Bennett High School in the amount of $332,000, an architect fee of $15,600, and authorizing a 6% contingency of $19,920 for a total cost of $367,520. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, if you would cast your vote. votes have been cast? I can't see that. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. All right, and we'll just keep rolling. So the next item is item 5.5, which is the approval of budget amendment number 8. Mr. Fry.
So this is our traditional May budget amendment, sort of a partial cleanup of for the fiscal year and a couple of new items on here. First item is amending our estimated revenue for our current year property taxes. I didn't intend to adjust our estimate for property taxes, but I started looking at our current year budget, next year's budget, and realized that we were going to run into a maintenance of effort issue. So, of course, the maintenance of effort says that you have to appropriate as much or more money of local revenue in next fiscal year as we have budgeted in this fiscal year. And of course, our initial estimate for our property taxes this year did not take into account the significant reduction in the property tax revenues that we're getting from Hawkins and Sullivan counties. So I was concerned about that, and I actually called the state and talked with Mary Ann Dursky, who's the Director of Finance for the Department of Education, and provided her some information and had her walk me through how we could avoid a maintenance of effort issue. And she informed me that we could lower our estimate for property taxes down to an amount that would match the amended local revenue that we had appropriated in the FY23 budget. We could not go below that, which our property tax revenues that we're getting this year are actually lower than what we got in fiscal year 23. But all that being said, our estimated local revenue for amended local revenue for FY23, which includes property taxes and sales taxes and the amount of money that we get from the city of Kingsport, all of our local revenue, was $47,164,900. Currently, this year, the amount is $49,293,900, which is $2,129,000 above what the amended FY23 amount was. So I'm recommending that we decrease our estimate for property tax revenues by $2,129,000. That'll bring us down to the amended amount for last year. And will also get us to an amount that is just a little bit lower than what we're going to, the budget that you have to approve tonight. The local revenue will be just a little bit higher than what this amended amount is for FY24. When I say a little bit higher, it's going to be $42,550 higher. So it's just, it doesn't have to be a lot higher. It just has to be $1 higher, or it has to be the same. It cannot be lower. So we'll meet maintenance of effort based upon this amended, what I'm recommending to amend the current year budget for. So we're going to lower our estimated revenue by $2,129,000, which also means that we've got to do a corresponding reduction in expenditure budget. Well, you know that in my financial updates all year long, I've told you that we appropriated some capital outlay monies that we were going to spend for, we were holding it back to spend for some recurring expenses this year. We have not spent that money. We didn't spend it, and we're not going to spend it because we just took that off the table when we found out that so we weren't getting the property tax revenue. The other thing that we're not spending is that we're not spending money for our SRO program. So the city of Kingsport and the state of Tennessee appropriated funds to place a school resource officer in every high school or every school in the state of Tennessee. And those monies are going to the city of Kingsport, so they have funding to fund most of the school resource officers. We have more than one per school because Dobyns-Bennett has 2, and we have one at DBE and Cora Cox, which those are all considered part of DB. But there will be, we had about $1 million appropriated that we were going to send to the city of Kingsport to fund that program, which we may spend a little bit of it, but we won't spend a significant amount of it. So recommending to reduce our current year property tax revenue by $2,129,000, reduce our appropriation for building improvements by $1,800,000, and reduce our appropriations for transfers to the city of Kingsport by $329,000. So that'll make adjustments to our current year budget in order to allow us to meet our maintenance of effort moving forward into FY25.
So all that occurred because of the county's reduction in property taxes?
Yes.
In property tax rate?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
They are the ones that cut the rate, which ostensibly cut funding for education.
So in Sullivan County, they didn't lower their property tax rate overall.
That's what they give us.
They shifted their property tax rate from the school fund to their city general fund to help them pay for some expenses that they were incurring in their city general fund, namely to fund construction of the new jail.
Did their schools suffer the same?
Yes. All 4 school systems in Sullivan County suffered a same reduction based upon our percentage of ADA. And when I say 4 school systems in Sullivan County, Johnson City is in Sullivan County also. Very, very small percentage.
But Hawkins is on here too. Did Hawkins?
Yes, Hawkins County, they lowered their school property tax rate also. About the same amount that Sullivan County did. It's just that in Hawkins County, we have 8% of the students as opposed to 38% in Sullivan County. So as we don't have nearly a significant amount of money coming from Hawkins County as we do Sullivan County.
Mr. Fry, is Sullivan County obligated to the same maintenance of effort?
Yes.
To their,
yes.
No matter how they collect where their funding comes from?
So what they were able to do is that they were able to increase their estimate for sales tax in an amount that allowed them to reduce their estimate for current year property taxes.
But an estimate is not, I mean.
Well, but see, their estimate for sales taxes in previous years in FY23 was very low, and their actual amounts were exceeding their estimates by a significant amount. So they were able to actually increase their estimate for sales tax revenue up to an amount that they were actually already getting, which allowed them to meet maintenance of effort. And also, they are losing students, so you don't have to meet the first level test, which means that you've got to have as much revenue this next year as you do this year. You have to meet it on a per pupil basis. You have to spend as much per pupil as you do from one year to the next. If you're losing students, the county can actually lower the amount that they're paying.
Is it a true statement now, though, that we are not seeing the sales tax increases that we have seen in the previous 2 or 3 years?
That they were counting on.
Well, there again, now they didn't really estimate an increase in their sales tax collections. What they did is that their prior year estimate for sales taxes was low, and they were collecting a higher amount. They
But
just,
when- but when they were questioned-
they just raised their estimate up to what they were already getting.
But when they were questioned, they being the voters, the commissioners, their answer to the question that we were concerned about was, well, it make up for it in sales tax.
Well, that's how they did it. They made up for it in their estimate for sales tax.
But not at a huge increase in sales.
Not an actual sales tax collections in their estimate for sales tax. Yes.
Did we not get an increase in funding from the state through the new funding mechanism? I thought there was a.
Oh, yeah, we got a significant increase in funding from the state.
Right, which would offset some of this.
Well, but you still can't lower your.
No, I understand that.
Local revenue.
I'm talking about, I mean, the county did what they're going to do, and they continue to do this. Since I've been on this board, this is the fourth time they've done it? Third time?
Third time.
Third time, okay. So it's nothing new.
Right.
And elections have consequences. Yeah. Should really elect people that are pro-education. But that being said, do we have an idea, have they said anything as far as like the money that they've offset to pay for the jail? Are they planning on returning that? I'm just saying, is there any communication from?
I will say that Sullivan County the Sullivan County general government and the Sullivan County administration will continue to meet their maintenance of effort requirement for Sullivan County schools.
Well, I guess I should ask this differently. Is the amount of money that they earmarked to pay for the jail sufficient to cover the jail, or does it look like they're going to have overage and they're going to use that as the excuse again in which to rob us?
That I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
But I've received information from the Sullivan County for next year, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in our budget here. But,
Okay.
but they're going to meet their maintenance of effort on a per pupil basis by a couple of dollars per student.
Thank you for your work on that. It's continues to.
You're just the messenger, man.
Yeah.
Yes, he is just the messenger that we hope to keep around for a very long time. We'll just reiterate that, very long time.
So the second item on here in our general purpose fund is a small appropriation for some grant monies that a couple of schools, Johnson and Lincoln, have received from the Tennessee Arts Commission for items that they apply for these things to pay for admission, to barter, or have some performing artists come in. Johnson received $2,564 and Lincoln $1,784. So we're recommending to increase our estimate for other state grants and our appropriation for principal's office other charges by $4,348. The next item is a large grant that this is now our third year receiving, our summer learning grant. The state has allocated to Kingsport City Schools $895,140 for summer learning camps. This consists of two smaller sub-grants, one for the academic portion of the summer learning program, $757,712, and a transportation component of $137,428. And this will be spent on teachers, teacher assistants, counselors, nurses, administration for people to administer the program, for teachers and teacher assistants, and then there are also supplies and materials, and of course bus drivers and maintenance on our buses and those sort of things. So recommending to increase our estimate for, actually part of this is federal monies, $265,199 in federal revenues and $629,941 in state funds, for a total of $895,140. Another item is kind of a cleanup item. You'll recall, I think it was in our first budget amendment of the year, we appropriated and accepted a donation from Melissa's Hope Foundation of $200,000. to be spent at Dobyns-Bennett and Sevier for some supplemental special education services. It was anticipated we'd have all those funds spent by the end of the fiscal year. We've spent the majority of them, but there are some funds that are still remaining, and I know Dobyns-Bennett has some plans for some professional development to take place in July and August. And instead of, and this is in our general purpose fund, so at June 30th, if there's any unspent monies, it closes into our fund balance. And so in order to keep these funds to where that they can utilize them, recommended to decrease the estimated revenues and appropriations for these funds and move these over into our multi-year school projects fund, which I'll mention that in a second.
I will say, just briefly, last night was the Transition School to Work dinner, and the donor was actually in attendance.
Oh, was he?
And was able to meet him and just say thank you. And I think they're buying a new van.
We have.
And some other things. And just an exceptionally generous, very kind man, and is already talking to Mr. Robertson about what they can do next year. What do you need for next year? Just exceptional. I was so glad just to get to say thank you in person. I had really forgotten about it, to be honest. It's been such a long time ago, but I think this is going to be a partnership, you know, in years to come as well. So not just a one-time donation. So very, very grateful to this family.
Yes. The next item, we have 6 different schools that are requesting to transfer some monies between some major categories in the budget. This is kind of a cleanup item. Dobyns-Bennett's, you know, they have some unspent monies in their budget, and they're requesting to move a total of $26,400 into their equipment accounts to meet some needs that they've got. Adams is wanting to transfer $5,000 between categories to buy some furniture. Jefferson, they're looking to buy some, they're moving $9,167 to buy some library furniture. Kennedy is requesting a transfer of $1,200 to provide some funding for some year-end activities. Lincoln just has some additional funds that they want us to buy some additional supplies, and Roosevelt some funds for some staff recognitions. So that's all for the general purpose fund. There in this particular budget amendment, I address all the funds that we have to kind of get everything cleaned up. So in our general project fund, and it's actually the city's general project fund, but that's where we account for our major capital projects. A couple of years ago, the board appropriated $943,000 of our fund balance money to replace all the video cameras, all the video surveillance cameras that we have throughout the system. Some of those were 10, 15 years old, and we needed, so we just bit off the bullet and just went ahead and did a system-wide project. It's now complete. It is a total cost of $935,207 with leaving a balance of $7,993. And we're recommending to transfer that over to our school improvement or school capital improvement project. That's where the Pridemore Theater funds are at. So that we'll just accumulate that money there.
That'll pay for the time.
Yep. School nutrition has been working on sending out a bid. Actually, we'll be opening the bids later this month and bringing back a recommendation to the board at your June meeting to purchase about $320,000 worth of various kitchen equipment. That'll come out of their fund balance. And in addition to that, they received this year funds from the USDA for supply chain assistance in the amount of $196,657 to help offset the increased cost of food, which has been significant. So we're recommending to appropriate that to their food account. So then in our federal projects fund, we have a couple of new grants that total $91,000. One is a summer literacy training stipend grant for $16,000, and an additional a grant for additional targeted supported improvement. It's a special education grant for $75,000. This will fund a teacher at Sevier Middle School. As always, in our federal projects fund, and again this year, the budget that I'm going to recommend approval for tonight for next year includes some amounts that are estimated for our federal projects, federal grants. We do not know the amounts, the final allocations for those grants yet. Some of them we won't know the final allocation on. Actually, some of these grants for FY24, we just found out the final allocation a few weeks ago. And our Title I grant was significantly reduced. So it's kind of hard to take a $100,000 reduction in a grant when you've already spent the money. But we're adjusting the FY24 budget to get in line with the amended amounts. Now, one thing I will mention, the state has been undergoing an audit from the federal government, and it was discovered that their allocations for some of their federal monies that for the last 5 to 7 years was not accurate, and which resulted in at least Kingsport City Schools receiving a pretty significant amount of additional money. If you'll notice on a couple of items on the schedule, we're getting about $217,000 in new IDEA money. We're getting $252,000 in new ESSER 3 monies, which we just found out about 3 weeks ago, and we have until September 30th to spend the money. Yes, yes. I have a plan.
We can do it.
I have a plan.
We can do it.
Yes, and thank you.
Yes,
Well, the thing about that
exactly.
is that in order to do an HVAC project, I have to hire an architect, I got to develop specs, you got to put it out to bid, and you got to get, so to do all that, I'm going to go back and we in the current year budget, we spent some money for some one-to-one devices back last summer, and I'm going to spend some of this money on some of that we've already spent. So it's an overall increase of $797,648 in our federal projects fund. And one final fund, the school special projects, a few new grants in here. It's significant amounts. Public school security grant, $343,876. That was a grant that the state of Tennessee funded in their FY24 budget. We had already approved our budget last year by the time when the state allocated these funds, in addition to a special education preschool grant of $169,139. You'll also notice that I'm increasing this fund for the Melissa's Hope, $200,000. This is where we're moving that money over to. And in conjunction with the Innovative Schools Model Grant, we're receiving funds of about $230,000 for Jobs for America's graduates to go into that program to fund the majority of one of our instructors in that program. So that'll increase that fund by $952,244. So that is a lot of information, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
That's a lot of numbers and
Yes.
a lot of commas,
Yes.
et cetera. Okay, any questions for Mr. Fry? Okay, then hearing none, the recommended action is to approve budget amendment number 8. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. So if you would cast your vote. Okay, I think all the votes have been cast. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it's noted that it passed unanimously. And Mr. Fry, if you will Finish us out here
Okay.
with item 5.6, the 24-25 KCS budget.
Okay, so have for your consideration the approval of the FY 24-25 budget for Kingsport City Schools. We talked about this at the work session 3 weeks ago. Couple of changes, really no changes on the expenditure side. I guess I'll go through all of this just so that for the public to hear everything. So of course our main source of revenue in our budget is our state of Tennessee funds from their funding formula, the Tennessee Investment in Student Achievement, or TISA funds. The overall allocation for Kingsport City Schools of TISA funds is $66,860,235. That's about $1 million increase from our total allocation from last year. Now, we don't receive all this money from the state of Tennessee. This is our, when everything's put into the formula and comes out of the formula, this is what Kingsport City Schools earns in state and local monies. So 70% of these funds are provided by the state, 30% is provided by local governments through property taxes and sales taxes. Our April estimate for TISA funds is $47,029,700, as opposed to our budget for FY24 of the allocation for FY24 of $46,271,300. That's an increase of $758,400 from the state of Tennessee. This is one of the things that's changed since I presented this to you at the work session in April. That this estimate is up about $400,000 from what the April estimate increased about $400,000 from our March estimate. I did not expect an increase of that amount. But what has happened is that the March estimate was based upon the fiscal capacity for FY24. They have updated the fiscal capacity for FY25 and plugged that into the formula, and Sullivan County's fiscal capacity went down, which means that the local governments are expected to pay a little bit less of the $66 million, which means that the state funding goes up. So overall, in the state of Tennessee, the state provides 70% of the funding, and local governments provide at least 30%. But that gets adjusted for each county based upon each county's ability to pay. So when the fiscal capacity was updated, Sullivan County's ability to pay actually went down relative to the other counties in the state, which resulted in us getting more money. This was included, this is a new slide, this next slide is, this was included in the numbers that I gave you last time, but I neglected to put this into my presentation. We have included $775,000 in outcomes money. That's in addition to the allocation that we currently have from the state, because we don't know what our outcomes funding are going to be for next year. This is based upon our third grade student achievement, our high school ACT scores, some CTE testing. So we don't know what our outcomes funding is going to be for next year. We'll get that money like we did this past year in December and January, but this estimate is based upon what we got this year. We got $775,000 this past year, and we have no reason to believe that we're not going to get at least that next year. Matter of fact, I think we're anticipating that we'll get more than that. But we know that we're going to get, we're confident we're going to get the $775,000. The allocation the overall allocation from the state is the same. It might have gone up a little bit, I'm not really sure, but I know it didn't go down. So that's in there. Now, one thing that has hurt us on our state funding is we've lost students. I mentioned earlier that Sullivan County was losing students. Well, we lost from our FY24 final TISA allocation, we had 7,525 students. The average that we've got now through our April estimate is 7,393, which is a reduction of 132 students. That's an overall decrease in the funding formula of $933,000, but in state monies, it's a reduction of $653,000. So if we had the same number of students that we had, we would be getting an additional $653,000 from the state. Now we're hoping that this is a one-time shot and that we're going to recoup these students next year, and which means that our TISA allocation will go back up for FY26.
How do we stay on top of student enrollment trending? And the reason I asked the question, I remember Jeff Fleming's dad, Uncle Jim, was superintendent of schools when I was a teacher, and he came in and at an in-service and scared us all to death because he did the trend lines, and he was accurate. Do we do anything to kind of project a trend line of our, or is it impossible?
No,
number of students.
No, we do projections on that. And as a matter of fact, what's the group's name? The consultant. Yeah,
Cooperative strategies.
Cooperative strategies. And part of our capital plan, there was, future projections done on enrollment. So yes, we try and monitor that.
Does it look like over the next few years there's going to be any significant change?
We bounce back next year. The projection goes up about 150 students. I mean, we don't know exactly with kindergarten,
right,
but it looks like we get back plus some next year.
Was there a specific area where we lost the majority? Because if you look at it, where was that?
High school.
Okay.
Yeah, a majority high school. Now, what we were able to tease out of that is 36 of those students were early graduates, so they graduated as 11th graders and didn't return as 12th graders this year.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, and then we had a number of students who went the homeschool route and then transferred various places, in-state, out-of-state, private school, so forth and so on.
How many did you say graduated early?
There were 36. I think it was 36.
That's awesome. It's a good reason to lose kids if they're getting on with their life earlier, right?
So it was interesting that it was almost exclusive. Our K-8 was pretty much a wash. Third grade might have been down 15, but fourth grade was up 17, and it was very consistent K-8, but high school, particularly 10th and 11th and 12th, took some hits.
So our next major source of revenue is the money that we get in county property taxes. I've estimated, and this is another change from the initial presentation, I've got an estimate of $14,650,000 in current year property taxes. That's $350,000 less than I had at the initial presentation. We've gotten information from the county that indicates that basically they're not anticipating any change in the assessed value. Where I had, if you remember, I had estimated like a 2.5% growth in assessed value, which I was kind of going out on a limb with that. But I feel like we need to bring that back down to a more realistic amount of the $14,650,000, which is significantly less than the current year estimate, about $3.7 million less than the current year estimate. Sales tax, I don't have any change from the initial presentation in sales tax. I'm still looking that we're going to get a little over $15 million this year, and a 3% growth in sales tax would push that up to about $15.5 million. We're teetering or somewhere in the 2 to 3% range in sales tax growth now. So we'll see how that works out next year. Again, our early childhood programs, we're recommending a $50 increase per month in the 3 levels for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers in that program. The infant rate will be $830 a month. The toddlers will be $810 a month, and the preschool will be $790 per month. That generates about $67,000 worth of new revenue for those programs.
And those fees have been communicated, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
When we had initially had this discussion back, gosh, in our February work session maybe, we needed to, and we kind of got, not a vote, but sort of a head nod that was going to be okay, and because we needed to communicate that out early. Those programs are still operating in a deficit, and we're about $176,950 deficit budget for that program next year, which is a little bit more than what we pay the directors for those programs, about $7,000 or $8,000 more than we're. So if we can get down to the level and maybe we're operating at a deficit where the board funds a portion of that program, we'll live with that. City of Kingsport, you have our state money, our county property taxes, our county sales tax, and then we have our city funds. And that's why we're a city school system, because we get the extra money from the City of Kingsport. What we get for operations from the city is $11,245,300. Same amount that we're getting this year, same amount that we've gotten for the past few years. So that has no increase from the city. There is an increase in the amount of money that we receive in debt service for the city of from the City of Kingsport. They sell bonds on our behalf to fund HVAC replacements, roof replacements, fixing the dome. They just sold $20 million worth of bonds to renovate the dome, to repair the dome, and to do renovations more than just replacing the roof and repairing the dome. That's the majority of this increase. There was one debt service payment included in that. The city makes 2 semi-annual debt service payments on all their bond issues. 24 had 1 payment for the dome in it, and next year we'll have the 2 full payments in there. So a total of $4,443,150 for debt service in there.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
You said that the City of Kingsport has given the school system 11.2 over the last several. How long?
There's not been an increase in those monies, I think, in probably 4 years.
Do you remember what the last increase was?
Just a small amount, maybe $200,000 to $400,000. It hasn't significantly increased in several years.
So no adjustments for inflation or anything like that?
No.
So I wonder I know what the rate of inflation's been over the last 3 years.
Right.
But over the last 8 years, I wonder, 10 years, what the rate's been. Just curious. I don't know.
It's been larger than the increase from the City of Kingsport has been.
I think we've seen a 22% increase. 22% increase in the last 15 years.
That's assuming that the value of the dollar is the same as it was 15 years ago.
But that's 22% increase in the largest item in our budget, which is labor.
We went, it's been 11.245 since 2020. 2019, it was 11.1. 2010, it was 9.02. 9.02 in 2010.
Well, the majority of our increases have always come from the county or the state. But the feds, too, every now and then they'll kick in a little extra, but.
Well, but there's very little money that goes into our general purpose budget for federal revenues, and most of the federal revenues are well, they're all earmarked for low-income students, special education students.
Right.
But the city's been more than generous on these major capital renovation situations like the dome, right?
They have.
Well, yeah, if you tally all the money that they've spent, it's over
I mean,
$50 million.
Part of the $4 million debt service is we're still paying the debt for the construction of John Adams Elementary School.
Right. These facilities are Kingsport City Schools for the city of Kingsport.
Yes.
Right.
So these are city facilities.
I mean, the dome's running what, 18?
20.
20?
23.
Well,
23.
then the add-on to DB was 20, 22.
Right. Well, yeah, that's the other significant portion of that is the Science and Technology Building.
Yeah, so there's next.
I will point out, though, and the city's aware of this too, is that the school system has taken on themselves a significant amount of capital improvement projects that we have funded, that the school board has funded. For example, the replacement for the HVAC systems at Johnson and Lincoln Elementary that are undergoing right now. That is coming out of the school system's fund balance. That's where we have had an excess of revenues over expenditures, and we're paying for that out of our fund balance. Our ESSER funds have paid for the $5 million replacement of the Dobyns-Bennett roof, for a $3 million replacement of the Robinson HVAC system. The school system paid several $1 million for the renovation of the Sullivan North Gym for the Tribe Athletic Complex. So, so we work with the city as best we can to do what capital we can, and I'll point out another item in this budget in a few minutes.
But to put it in perspective, when I came on to touch a roof used to be $1 million. You just quoted it was $5 million to do.
Well, DB is a big roof.
Right, but I remember when the cost of a roof doubled.
Oh, yes.
And it was when they issued ESSER dollars.
Well, yes. I mean, not only that, but I mean, we anticipated 7, 8 years ago that it was going to be $1 million to replace the HVAC system at Lincoln Elementary or Johnson Elementary. Well, it's 2.5 for each.
Right.
Not $1 million. We went up more than double.
So to your point, it was the devaluation of the dollar caused by the federal government spending, inventing dollars, which is what caused this massive increase and made everything terrible.
Well, when billions of dollars were put out in ESSER monies, and the primary purpose for the capital improvements on that was to improve air quality, guess what happened to the cost of HVAC equipment?
And the wages that went along with it. Yeah. The bacon.
Yeah, the Davis Bacon wages.
All the pipe fitters.
Yep.
Make sure this fit.
So that's a total general purpose budget of $98,532,250, which is the same amount that I had presented last week. It was just a shift between state and county property tax revenues. On our expenditure side, we're recommending that we give a modest 1% cost of living increase to all of our employees. Not keeping up with the rate of inflation, but with the reduction in county property taxes and the loss of state funding due to our loss of students, that's just all that we can afford. We are giving the step increases. So for our certified personnel, the step increases are teachers that are on the teacher pay scale. That's $622,100. And the 1% cost of living for the teachers and the certified staff is $507,500. Classified staff, their pay scale includes 2% step increases for a cost of $238,000 and 1% cost of living of $122,400. So go ahead. Yes.
So that 1% is, it's not a true reflection of what our classified and non-classified employees really get, because they got the step increases that are built in.
So the teacher step increases on average are about 1.25%. So in addition to that, they're going to get the 1% cost of living. So on average, because our teacher steps, they're small at the beginning, they get bigger in the middle, and then they go down. So, but on average, a teacher's going to get about a 2.25% increase. And the classified staff will get about a 3% increase. So no, it's a 1% adjustment to this pay scale. But the total cost of that is $1,490,000. In order to do a 1% cost of living for all of our employees, in order to do a 1% scale adjustment for all of our employees, is about $630,000. I believe this is probably, maybe not the first, but I don't know if I can remember a budget where we did not have any new personnel recommended in the budget. Not that we don't need some new personnel, we desperately need, and we will repurpose some positions more than likely in our current budget for some special ed needs that we are going to have to meet. We are adding personnel into our general purpose budget, but they are positions that we're already funding through grant funds that where the ESSER monies are going away. We are currently have 13 interventionists, K-12, that are funded by ESSER, that either we pick them up locally in our local budget or they go away. We're putting them in, that's a priority for us. We're putting them in our local budget, total cost of $943,000. A science specialist of $46,000. And part of the Innovative School Models grant, it's a $2 million grant, but one of the stipulations in there is that we pick up some of the cost of the personnel on a sliding basis, and this next year we're required to pick up 25% of those costs. So none of these are new positions. These are positions that we currently have today, but we're adding them into this budget for a total cost of $1,124,000.
And for the at-home viewer, an interventionist, if you could briefly describe what they do. If I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I'll let Dr. Hampton.
Dr. Hampton. In our elementary and middle schools primarily, those are individuals who are helping to close learning gaps that just occur as students move from grade to grade level, missing skills. And many times, not always, but the intervention that is provided is in hopes to keep students out of the special ed pipeline, but sometimes it's to support those students who are in the special ed pipeline as well. At the high school level, it's more standards-based, helping kids who've gotten behind, almost like what we see with our graduation coach, working with kids who are not making the best decisions, helping with homework, helping with time on task, helping with assignments, organization, just those things that will help a high school student get back on track. But at the elementary and middle, it really is developing, building in, closing gaps, and building foundational skills.
And because we're retaining or keeping 13 of them, then obviously they've been effective. So
I think our elementary and middle school folks would say they have been critical to the progress we've made, and I can speak specifically to the high school. It was much needed and just in time.
And is 13 all we had district-wide?
Yes, we have one at each school, 2 at Dobyns-Bennett, and DBXL and Cora Cox share 1.
So all the interventionists that we had, we retained 100% of them.
we had some of these before the ESSER dollars, correct? Or these were new positions created by ESSER?
These 13 were created by ESSER. Some of our title schools use their title funds to have it. So, for example, Jackson, there are 2. Lincoln, there are 2. I'm not sure. I don't think we have 2 at Kennedy and Roosevelt, but those 2 schools have 2.
Okay. In addition to the 13?
Yes,
okay.
but they're paid for out of their title dollars.
Okay.
Some other increases related to personnel. We're looking at possibly a 5% health insurance increase from the State of Tennessee Health Insurance Program, $243,000. That's for active employees, which I think we'll see a similar increase for our retirees for $50,000. There's a retirement rate adjustment for the employees that were hired before 2012, I think it is, that they're in the old TCRS legacy program. There's a That rate continues to go up. That population goes down. There's no more employees going into that program. It's just the employees that are leaving that, the longer employees that were in there. One of the things we were doing with ESSER dollars was paying for some additional work for teachers, funding some of our summer school. The summer learning program funds that we talked about in the budget amendment, that's not available for the high school. That's a K-8 program. So what we've been funding our high school summer learning with has been our ESSER dollars for the past 3 years. So that's going away. We're going to fund it with ESSER dollars this summer, but we will not have that next summer. So we're recommending to add $156,600 to our what we call additional roles and responsibilities monies for our teachers. And then, of course, our coaching pay scale, as we adjust for cost of living increases, our coaching pay scale is based upon our teacher pay scale, and there are step increases that are built into that. So there's about $51,000 worth of increases for coaching supplements and some academic stipends. Some other miscellaneous expenses. Dr. Hampton mentioned a while ago, we're looking at starting up a lacrosse program next year. That's very little in here for supplies and equipment, but mainly this is for coaching supplements, $25,000. The drug testing program, we've added $25,000 to the budget for that program. We'll see how far those monies takes us. It may be that if that's not enough, we may have to come back with an amendment or increase that in next year's budget. Our technology budget has some increases in some of their maintenance fees for some software programs, for the student information system, for our financial system, $30,000. And some insurance increases for $15,000 for liability insurance. What we pay to the city of Kingsport to fund their risk department, $65,100, and an increase in building insurance for $78,300. I think that everybody can relate to seeing increases in building insurance. And as we talked earlier on the revenue side, the debt service that we get from the city, it flows into our budget and flows out to our budget, so it's kind of an offsetting $743,000. I mentioned a while ago that we were talking about our capital money and what the school system funds for capital. We've had for, 15, 20 years, I guess we probably had this when you were on the board previously, Mr. Dean, a $300,000 CIP budget for several years. That funds some small capital projects, maybe replacing the floor coverings in 5 or 6 classrooms at a particular school, or replacing a $10,000 water heater, or different things like that. We added $100,000 to that this year that basically came from the new TISA monies. But one of the things that is happening next year is that we're paying off it'll be the last year, it's not quite paid off, it will be a partial payment next year, but there's a reduction in a loan payment that we took out in 2010 when we did some energy improvements. And that loan will be paid off. This is one item of debt that the city does not fund. When we went to the city and asked them to approve this loan, we said that we would pay the loan payment on our energy savings, which has been successful and we've done. But next year that loan payment is going down $293,100. And instead of putting that money back into our operations, we're recommending to put that into our $300,000 CIP pot to make that $600,000 to where we can have a little bit more impact with our capital funds. The final payment next year is $150,000, and my anticipation right now is to, in the 26 budget, to put that $150,000 into this line item to make it $750,000, and that'll allow Mr. Sewell to do a little bit more capital work throughout the system. This budget is less than, this FY25 budget is less than this year's budget. And one of the reasons is, you know, we lost that county revenue. But we had some one-time funds in this budget that we were saving back. We had some bus purchases of $500,000, some SRO monies of $400,000, some monies that we were saving for the reduction or the Lawson ESSER funds. So there's reduction in here of about $3 million of one-time funds that we had budgeted. So with that reduction and with some increases in sales tax and TISA monies, you know, we don't have a $3 million reduction in our budget, but a little over $1 million. But this is where some of that is coming from. Matter of fact, on the next page, you know, our budget is going down $1,246,550. So that's our general purpose budget, total of $98,532,250. Just like in your budget amendment that we just talked about a minute ago, we have a couple of other funds. Our school nutrition services fund is $4,850,000 for next year. We're breaking even. It's with the increase in labor that we've had for the past couple of years. If you'll remember, we've significantly increased our classified pay scale over the last couple of years. There's been 4-5% scale adjustments for the classified employees. Food costs have just, you know, we talk about inflation. Well, it's really, I mean, everybody can see it when they go to the grocery store. It's what we pay to put food into our kitchens has dramatically increased also. We're not recommending a meal price increase for next year. And as we stand now, we're recommending that we continue with our community eligibility program, CEP, at our 5 title schools, Sevier, Jackson, Kennedy, Lincoln, and Roosevelt. We are still looking, we were not prepared to make a recommendation tonight, but we may be back to the board in the very near future to make a recommendation that we extend the community eligibility program system-wide. That way, all children that go to Kingsport City Schools would receive a standard breakfast and a standard lunch at no cost.
I was going to ask that question. I've been asked that by some community members.
Right.
And what's the determining factor on that?
Well, of course, when there's some adjustments to the federal funding formula that happen when you do that, and we will see increased federal revenues from our non-participating schools that we have right now. We won't see much change in these schools, but we'll see an increase in our federal revenues from the other schools, from the other 6 schools. But what we're really investigating right now is to make sure that what we're going to gain in those federal revenues will offset what we're going to lose and what we're collecting from the students that are paying for those meals now. We want this program to be self-supporting. We want to make sure that this program will sustain itself. We don't want to go into this program and say, let's recommend this, and then come back to this board this time next year and say, it's not working out, and now we've got to go back and charge again. We don't want to do that. So we're still looking. There was some information that came out recently that we're still looking at, and we actually had that on the agenda tonight, but we just weren't prepared to we still needed to have a little bit of time. Now, if we're going to do it for next year, we have to tell the state that we're going to do it by June 30th. So if we're going to make a recommendation, we'll be back to you at the June board meeting to make that recommendation.
I really hate making decisions that quick on something this large, especially if it has consequences of if we do it wrong, we got to come back and. Yeah, well, I'd really rather have, I'd rather we just skip a year and come back to this, or do it mid-year than rush this thing through in June, because I have a lot of questions about, first of all, I've seen some of the food. I'm not criticizing, but I just see no protein in some of the meals that the kids eat. And maybe it's just my son who likes to pull chips and pull the grab bag. Maybe I need to go audit some of these food selections, but I'm gravely concerned that because we do this and it automates the food quality, we are neglecting and damaging our children by giving them ultra-processed foods. And if we become beholden to a system that funds us a certain way with the increased costs of food, we're going to lower the quality. That is a very serious concern of mine, and I do not want to rush through this process.
Well, of course, Jennifer Walker's not here tonight, but I would, we have to meet certain guidelines on the meals that we serve, on the reimbursable meals. We have to meet certain nutrition guidelines on those meals, and we do.
Are those state or federal?
Federal.
I don't care what the federal level is. This was set a long time ago by a president I didn't care for. So it's a hot button for mine. I don't want to rush through it. And I'm not trying, I'm just trying to warn because I don't want to uncork a genie here.
Well, and one of the items that we're looking at too, and we don't, and there again, I mean, this kind of goes back to your point of getting a little bit more history under our belt, but we entered into the NETCO cooperative, and we're looking, and that's one of the things that they're looking at now is to see, because we've just gotten some information of what some unit costs are for NETCO and what we're currently paying. So that's one of the things that we're looking at, is that trying to estimate what our savings will be on food cost from entering into that cooperative. And that's something that goes into, I mean, if we can lower our food cost and still provide the same quality.
I'm just going to start auditing food, man. I
understand. So
I've seen some of the stuff, and I wouldn't feed it to my own children.
But this is a recommendation we're making tonight, is to continue how we're operating right now. Then we have our federal projects budget. The majority of these funds come from our Title I grant, almost $2.5 million. That's for our lower income schools, the Sevier, Jackson, Lincoln, Kennedy, Roosevelt. Special education funds, just short of $2 million. Well, when you add our preschool special ed monies, it is in excess of $2 million. Title II is close to $600,000. That's for teacher recruitment and staff development. Title III for English language learners. Our Carl Perkins grant, as Ms. Woods mentioned a minute ago, the Transition School to Work program, $263,000. So for a total federal projects budget today of $5,998,591. And then our school special projects budget, we have a couple of programs in here that we still put some money over here for some donations, just to have those donations out separate so they don't, if they don't get spent right away, they don't close into our fund balance and get lost. The monies for these programs, the main monies for these programs were folded into TISA dollars, and they're now funded for in our general purpose budget. We have a state preschool grant. We have, I think, 8 preschool classrooms that a total of $750,000. And then a truancy grant, which we've had for, gosh, it must be 20 years at least, $53,720. So that's a total fund there of $823,720. All told, a total budget for all 4 funds of $110,204,561. So I'd be happy to answer any more questions that you might have. Other than that, recommending approval.
I think when I was on the first time, I think our budget was like 48, maybe.
Maybe. I'd be interested to go back and see what it was.
I remember when it jumped over 100.
Yeah. Well, yeah, with the general purpose budget, I think this past year, no, it was just short of 100. So our general purpose budget hasn't hit 100 million yet, but.
I seriously worry about what I call mission creep. You just look, who could ever argue with feeding a child? You know what I mean? I'm not saying that, but somehow I just looked up one day and we were delivering meals. You know, I don't know exactly how those things happen, and But I think it's something to pay attention to. I don't know what other areas.
Well, when COVID hit,
Yeah.
and that might be what you're referring to, and COVID hit, we did actually take meals out to neighborhoods. We don't do that anymore. Now, in our summer program, we will provide meals for people to come to the schools that aren't participating in our summer programs to get food. But they have to come to us.
They don't have to qualify. I mean,
No, they come to us. We don't deliver it to them.
Okay. Again, lots of numbers and lots of commas, and we really appreciate all the work. And you're always so on top of it, trying to look at innovative ways to get things balanced, so we really appreciate it. So the recommended action then is to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 Kingsport City Schools budget as presented. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. So we will cast our vote. Okay, the votes have been submitted, so all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you for all.
One more thing.
One more.
I feel like we've kind of been over most of this already. But our third quarter financial update. This is our financial update as of March 31st. Really no new information to present to the board since really the second quarter financial update and going through the budget process. I think you're pretty much aware of everything that's in here. We're receiving our TISA monies as we anticipated. We'll get what we thought we were getting from our state TISA allocation. We have got the outcomes funding, a little over $775,000. Now, we're not going to spend that money. We're not recommending that we spend that money. We're going to let that close into our fund balance, just as a safety net for what we're losing in our county revenue. But we did just approve a budget. The board just approved a budget that does allocate that money for next year. Our property taxes from Hopkins and Sullivan County, we know that we're going to be significantly short, probably in the neighborhood of about $3.5 million in our county property tax monies due to reductions of tax rates. Sales tax, and it says through December, that should say through March. We've actually received 76.7%, at 75% of the year, and we've received almost 77%, so that's encouraging. So I think we'll be close to what our estimate is. I think we'll be somewhere in the $15 million range, which is about what our estimate is. And tuition, for our regular tuition students, we are going to be a little bit short in our tuition revenue. We estimate $420,000. I think we're going to be somewhere closer to $384,000 in our tuition collections. Our early childhood programs, we've had a lot of discussion about our early childhood programs. The budget we just approved had a deficit budget of about $175,000. Right now, through the third quarter, we're running a deficit of $92,000. So if that goes up to $125,000, that's going to be smaller than what we just approved for a budget for next year. So hopefully we'll meet expectations there. After school programs, I mean, those programs are someplace where we'll make a little bit of money in our after school programs. We have a surplus of about $21,000 now. I just mentioned some fund balance appropriations that we made in our initial budget and that we've made throughout the year, about $1.7 million. Well, we appropriated about $1.7 million for Johnson and Lincoln HVAC improvements. which is in addition to money that had already been appropriated. The total cost of those two projects is in excess of $4 million. Mentioned to you before on the expenditure side, I mean, we haven't had any unexpected expenditures this year. Of course, the majority of our budget is salaries and wages, and those have come, are coming in as we budgeted them. I mentioned in the budget presentation a minute ago several one-time expenses that we had in our budget that we just didn't spend because of the shortfall in county property taxes. Even with the shortfall in county property taxes, I wouldn't expect I hope we don't see a reduction in our fund balance because of that. If we do, I don't think it will be significant because of some of the one-time monies that we had budgeted that we haven't spent, the outcomes money that we received that we're not spending. So I think we've taken some precautions to not have a significant impact on our fund balance. So that's it in a nutshell. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. We really do appreciate it. You've been spinning a lot of plates just with this meeting alone, so
yep.
Greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Ms. Byers not here to do her normal monthly report. I don't have anything. What do we do? Is it work sessions?
But we don't have a work session this month.
Yeah,
so.
That's what I was saying. That's one reason I thought I'd say this. I saw on the news today is National Chihuahua Recognition Day. And I laughed, and then I got really mad because May is Military Appreciation Month, and I hadn't heard anything about that. And we got people Vivi's got to go see her son and her grandchildren in Europe because her son has dedicated himself to protecting and serving this country. And there's who knows how many people's lives are affected by that. And they go unrecognized, and they do it so people can have schools like ours, and they can say stupid things like they do at these universities where they're picketing, and they give us that. And we need to always stop and recognize and remember that. So the Chihuahua thing just sent me over the edge, and I hadn't heard anything about Military Appreciation Month. So just keep in mind, anybody that might be listening, we need to thank everybody, all the men and women.
Thank the military for everything they do for us. Give us these freedoms, for sure. Dr. Hampton, do you have anything that you want to add?
Well, since we don't have a May work session, I'll just take this opportunity. There's so much to celebrate in our school system, from performing arts to athletics to academics, not necessarily in that order. It is a privilege to be in a school system that achieves at such a level. Rather than to recount those, because we'll put all those out on our social media sites, I'll take this opportunity to thank those who make it possible. Our educators, our teachers, our principals, our counselors, our school nurses, our instructional assistants and office staff, custodians, cafeteria workers, all those folks who are boots on the ground doing the hard work, the stressful work, the blood, sweat, and tear work every day. They allow us as a school system to have the year and to have the celebrations we get to have. And so just would like to thank them for what I believe has been a remarkable year. I wish them the best, most restful break for those who get a break. Many don't. Many of our employees don't have those few weeks off in June and July. I hope that it's wonderful and recharging, and though we still have a few days in this school year, this would be my last public opportunity before graduation to say thank you to those very special people.
I think all of us sitting here would echo your remarks. It's been an incredible year, and it's hard for me to believe it's May, to be perfectly honest. I did want to mention, and like he said, we've still got a lot of students who are participating, a lot of our spring sports. Our girls softball's doing an incredible job. They play tomorrow night here. As long as they keep winning, they keep playing here until they make it to, hopefully make it to the spring fling there in Murfreesboro, join our track folks, and hopefully our boys soccer will join them as well. But just a couple of students that I did want to acknowledge that some of us were able to see last night with the transition school to work dinner, and that is we have 2 students who have signed their letters of intent to enroll at East Tennessee State University and use that opportunity, and it's Landon Krantz and Kristen Cantu, and just incredible to see all those students honored last night, but to see just the pride with which they support one another, and then that opportunity that they're going to have at East Tennessee State University. So very, very impressive. Special thanks to the people who are the boots on the ground in that particular area, and really across the board. And what I think, I just listening to what Dr. Hampton was saying, so many of the people, even last night, they're getting updates on the softball score, and it's not just, they don't just care about what particular area they work in. They love all the kids and support all the kids, and so it's really a great thing, and I'm looking forward to graduation and really getting to celebrate the students walking across that stage. It's a spectacular event, so looking forward to it. Any other comments? Okay, with that, we will adjourn. Roll Tribe.